Alright, good morning everyone. I meant to do this video last night, but just this a little bit. But time got away from me. I went and saw Trap by M. Night Shyamalan, and when I got home, I realized that movie had sapped all of the mental bandwidth that I had to do this, even though I was prepared and ready. I had been thinking about it the entire night before, but that movie was just so unbelievably disappointing and bad that I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do the video. I'll just schedule it for 9:30 tomorrow. And here we are. And even though it's not going to be a main focus of the video itself, I thought, oh, maybe it was actually for the better because we learned who's going to be Kamala's VP pick. And I have a little bit to say about that. Kind of interesting. I'm curious to see what other people say the reason is. I have my theories. So I thought maybe we would just start off with a little bit of that. We're gonna get a lot of these kind of fawning interviews, fawning, articles about the man, Tim Walz, who is the governor of Minnesota, who she picked for her vice presidential running mate. And let me just come out and say, I don't dislike the guy, just on the face of it. He, in a sea of disgusting swamp creatures, is one of the lesser disgusting swamp creatures. Let's just put it that way. I'm really glad she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, the dude who, I bet, he might bow out. I haven't seen anything, but he might concede and bow out gracefully. But given his track record in history, that dude, the moment that she picked Tim Walz, that he wanted to come out guns blazing, calling them anti-Semites, because that's his complete go-to for any criticism whatsoever. You're just anti-Semitic, and he weaponizes his Jewishness and his heritage as a political bludgeon for anyone that doesn't just fall in line with him. So, exactly what you'd expect in the United States government, given our close ties with AIPAC and Israel. And so, I'm very glad she didn't pick him. He's a super cynical actor, but definitely not the last we've heard of that dude. He is definitely going to be in our future. But we got Tim Walz, so we're going to be seeing a lot of articles like this. 55 things to know about Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's pick for VP, governor of Minnesota, served in the National Guard for like 2 decades, and as a high school teacher before he got into politics. And it's just going to be, he was born in West Point, a Nebraska town, raised in an even smaller town called Butte. Enlisted in the Army National Guard when he was 17. Blah blah. A lot of this stuff is, just milk toast. He still speaks Mandarin. He taught on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. I tell folks that managing a high school lunchroom for years trained me for the craziness that can overtake Washington, D.C. He's just like total dad vibe politician, which honestly, again, this is not an endorsement whatsoever. But, when the bar is so low and you're a craven careerist with no interest in the American people's well-being at all, and then you get this guy who just seems like a kind of a run of the mill politician, but gives off a little bit like dad, you know, goober kind of vibes. It's not the worst thing for people when we've had just craziness for the last, you know, how however many years you think it's been crazy, that's how long. Um he was inspired to join Kerry's campaign after he took a group of high school students to a George W. Bush campaign rally and security interrogated one of his students because he had a Kerry sticker on his wallet. I think that it was a smart pick because he gives this air of progressive bona fides to Kamala Harris, which we'll dive into shortly, who, even though the Republicans are going to try and tar and feather her in this absolutely politically and just factually brain dead way, it 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 irks me to my core just as much as when progressives, or just, I shouldn't say progressives, just liberals in general, kind of the shit libs, will throw around words like the ists and the phobes willy nilly for anyone who kind of like Shapiro, throwing around anti Semite, just for anyone who doesn't automatically agree and when it doesn't fit the context of the situation whatsoever. And so, what I've been seeing from Fox News, and especially now after she's picked Tim Walz, who has a little bit more of the, um, it's hard with labels because it doesn't accurately describe him, but he's got more of an air of progressivism to him. And so they've, because this is the only playbook that they have, they've decided to take that, and because they know that they can't necessarily run against some of the things because they're massively popular, even amongst conservatives, even if they're lefty progressive policies, they tend to be the more populist policies. And so, regardless of what end of the spectrum politically the voters are, populism just wins. And so, what they've decided to do was line up some lines of attack. Let me see if I can find it here for you. I saw this in, here we go, in Fox News, because of course I only saw the first one, so I'll go with these, or through these with you guys. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Kamala for president, and the K is with the hammer and sickle. Vance is weird. That is one of the only sticking points where I'm like, yeah, he coined that weird talking point, but it landed with a lot of the shit libs. I think because Vance is weird, but I think all of these people are weird. We support trans for kids, defund police, late term abortion, open borders. So, kind of lands, but this right here, this hammer and sickle, this is where they're starting to go. They're starting on this. They were already trying to do it to Kamala, but this is where it's really going to get bad now because Tim Walz, they think that they have so much ammunition, when in reality, the dude is just a slightly populist progressive in the scheme of the Democratic Party, which is essentially a center right, um, corporate party. Now, all you have to do is barely be to the left of them, and all of a sudden you're a progressive populist. But nonetheless, again, all relatively, now they feel that, I'm talking about the Republicans, they feel that they can lob this charge of socialist, communist onto him and her, which could not be further from the truth. Kamala Harris was the darling of the ruling elite, Wall Street, because she was just a malleable puppet that they saw as one of the easiest to manipulate and would be one of the friendliest to their cause, which is less regulation for us, less taxes for us. Let us basically hollow out this country even more than it already has been. And so, just regarding the political strategy that Fox News and the Republicans are doing, I think this is, not only is it dumb just on its face, because she couldn't be farther from a fucking communist, but it's just dumb politically, because the more you try to smear her as this secret communist who, and then you list the policies that you think goes along with communism or socialism, and they happen to be, certain ones are not super duper popular amongst any base of people, whether it be left or right. But like, for example, the late term abortion, don't even talk about abortion. The moment that Republicans talk about abortion, they lose, because they're on the wrong side of it, according to most American people. Even a lot of Republicans think that, the extent to which they're going to, or they've kind of feigned that they're going to limit abortion is too much. And so it's just a losing political strategy to go after them in this way. It's only going to potentially energize some people that were already not going to come out to vote, but were sitting on the fence, into thinking that they're more progressive and left than they are. And I think that's why Kamala picked Walz. Like I was saying, kind of gives her a little bit more cover to look like a progressive, quote unquote. And so let's just go remember who Kamala Harris is / was. Let me just put these on really quick so I can listen along.
Criticized Hillary Clinton as the, quote, personification of the...
This is back during the 2019 presidential race. This is the first of two absolute smackdowns by Tulsi Gabbard of Kamala Harris that we're going to witness.
The rot that has sickened the Democratic Party. What is the rot you see in the Democratic Party?
That our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people. It is a party that has been and continues to be influenced by the foreign policy establishment in Washington, represented by Hillary Clinton and others' foreign policy, by the military-industrial complex and other greedy corporate interests. I'm running for president to be the Democratic nominee that rebuilds our Democratic Party, takes it out of their hands, and truly puts it in the hands of the people of this country, a party that actually hears the voices of Americans who are struggling all across this country, and puts it in the hands of veterans and fellow Americans who are calling for an end to this ongoing Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy doctrine of regime change wars, overthrowing dictators and other other countries, needlessly sending my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way to fight in wars that actually undermine our national security and have cost us thousands of American lives. These are wars that have cost us as American taxpayers trillions of dollars since 9/11 alone, dollars that have come out of our pockets, out of our hospitals, out of our schools, out of our infrastructure needs. As president, I will end this foreign policy, end these regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and arms race, and instead invest our hard-earned taxpayer dollars actually into serving the needs of the American people
Thank you,
right here at home.
Senator Harris, any response?
Oh, sure.
So, just pausing really quick. Very well thought out anti-war message, talking about how it's a uniparty message of doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, you exercise the exact same foreign policy. And to anyone who's been following along, that's because the State Department doesn't necessarily change with the president. They are unelected officials who actually hold a lot of the foreign policy power, and they really want to coup anyone who has something that they want and won't just give it to them. That has been our, like she said, regime change policy for a long time. And Tulsi is one of the better anti-war messages, or anti-war candidates, I should say, who actually might change or make a difference in terms of our meddling overseas. Oh, it looks like my webcam is acting up again. Let me just play this while I...
I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time,
That's
who has
ridiculous.
spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition.
Okay. So, that initial answer was complete horseshit, and let me tell you why. She immediately attacks her with smears about, oh, Tulsi doesn't call a war criminal. She's talking about Assad, which is already debunked. Tulsi just basically did a fact-finding mission over in Syria. We won't relitigate that, but she was right on the issue. Already Kamala Harris saying, don't worry, I'll be a good girl. I will advocate for regime change wherever you want me to. Secondly, her other massive sticking point with Tulsi is another signal. And it's a signal that I won't attack the Democratic Party from the inside, from the left. I'll be a good girl. I'm a team player. I am whoever you want me to be. I am a political windsock. When she says someone who can win, but there's someone on this stage who does nothing but attack the Democratic Party, she's implying that, don't worry, I'm not going to pressure anyone to the left. I will toe whatever party line you want me to. And already, if you knew about Kamala's record, you already knew she was a piece of shit. But if you didn't know anything about her and you just saw this one exchange, and you have any progressivism, principled lefty in you, or even just you're a conservative, but you're also just a anti-war conservative, it's clear who would have been not only just your choice, but who is the person who's actually got guts and who is the craven careerist who will say anything to party or to curry favor with one of the two major heads of the Hydra, the Democratic Party.
And bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes.
Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because
just look at Kamala Harris's body language here. Look at her shoulders, for one.
Continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making.
Just so arrogant and smug. And she knows that Tulsi's about to swat down, because Tulsi knew that this was coming. She knew, that she's right on the issue, but the American people aren't exactly informed on a cover-up of a gas attack that happened in Syria, and Tulsi does. And so she knows she has to swat it down forcefully for what they are, smears and lies. And it's just funny to kind of armchair psychoanalyze Kamala and just see the smug arrogance. And, I'm no psychiatrist, I'm no psychologist, but there's got to be something to that obvious tell where she did that thing with her shoulders. It's just too perfect. It's like she swatted it down, but I'll get her. I have more smears. That's kind of the vibe that I get from it.
The leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the state legislature in Hawaii, volunteered to deploy to Iraq, where I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make sure always, no, I'm not going to put party interests first. I will put the interests of the American people above all else.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I want to briefly give Senator Harris a final second to respond.
I believe that what our nation needs right now is a nominee who can speak to all people. I spent my entire career standing mostly in a courtroom speaking 5 words, Kamala Harris for the people. And it was about all the people, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of where they live geographically, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote or the language their grandmother speaks. We need someone on this debate stage in November who has the ability to unify the country and to win the election. And I believe, again, I am that candidate.
Thank you for watching this video from NBC.
I don't care, NBC. If someone else had the clip, I wouldn't be watching it from you. Fuck off. Okay. Even the second webcam is not working, so that's lovely. Give me 2 seconds. There we go. I got it. Okay. I'm gonna have to get rid of the other webcam. Hopefully this one isn't too terrible of quality. Looks okay. Hang on. Let me get rid. There we go. We're back. Stupid razor, as usual. All right, there we go. We'll just have to make that suffice. Anyways, so with that video, it just clearly shows that she was angling to the moneyed interests at, you know, the Democratic fundraisers that, don't worry, I am your girl. I will not rock the boat. I am essentially, you know, your puppet. She essentially had no comebacks of her own for how she was going to end regime change wars, and she didn't pivot to the left and basically say, I agree with her here, but blah 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 blah, here smear 1, smear 2, smear 3. What she did was signal that she was going to smear Tulsi in a way that was friendly to the establishment. Now, we're going to get to the legendary clip of Tulsi Gabbard. Absolutely, this is what single-handedly ended Kamala Harris's presidential run, and it's pretty clear that Biden didn't really want to pick her as VP, but they felt in the moment that they had to for certain reasons. this out.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Absolutely curb stomped, body slammed her right there. Just on her record. This is what Republicans should be doing. This video that I'm doing right here is what Republicans should be doing. It's unbelievable how bad they are at their own jobs. All they have to do is just run on her record, run against her record. She's terrible. She's absolutely terrible. She was a corrupt prosecutor that covered up, we'll get to it, but covered up crime within her own department and is clearly just a party or a career climber who is a political windsock. But instead of talking about that and essentially cratering her like Tulsi did in that video, they're deciding to call her a secret socialist communist and go all in on culture war with a little bit of policy like the border. But it's such a losing strategy. And I'm not a Republican. I'm not rooting for them. It's just so unbelievably frustrating to see how stupid they are. It's like watching, SJWs lob the terms that I was talking about around misogynist, racist, sexist, Nazi, just throwing these terms around and devaluing them when people say anti-Semitic. It's just funny because we've made communism and socialism a bad word or bad words in this country. And, I'm not a communist or a socialist, but it's just so funny because inherently it's not bad. It's the connotation that we've attached to it, and then they lob that around just to anyone, even this total corporate center-right person, maybe slightly less center-right, depending on if you actually think she believes in any of the policies that she espouses now, but considering how quickly she turned on a dime, I don't really agree with that. Let's go now that Tulsi was alluding to it. Now, for the record, I don't know if this is the exact same guy. We're not going to watch the entire video, but the title is Kamala Harris's prosecutors sent this innocent man to prison. Back when she was San Francisco DA, U.S. Senator Kamala Harris, now a presidential contender, this was back from October 10th, 2019, and a self-described progressive prosecutor, yeah, I'm so sure, cost the city of San Francisco millions of dollars and cost Jamal Truelove more than 6 years of his life. Harris allowed the people working under her to pursue a murder charge against Truelove that was ultimately overturned by an appeals court. Harris has yet to account for this incident, which is in stark contrast to the progressive image she is trying to project as she runs for president.
A million years, I would have thought that they were going to charge me for Sell's murder. I never talked to no detective, no police officer, no DA, nobody.
Just arrested and then charged?
Arrested and charged, that's it.
Was the first time you saw Kamala Harris in person the day that the verdict was issued?
She showed up at the two most pivotal times in this first trial, and me being convicted and me being sentenced. She wanted to
wanted to be present for a celebration of a conviction. Now, that is not a progressive prosecutor. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these people who's applauding a lot of the so-called progressive prosecutors that are in, you know, cities like San Francisco and other large, kind of more liberal cities nowadays. Now, I'm a progressive, but the idea of we're going to go so easy on crime that it's almost an open invitation to steal, loot, retail theft. It's funny, in my county in Northern California, it's a little bit kind of a lot more red. And this specific county has been very good in terms of retail theft and crime because the police force, is a good one. They're tough, but they're fair. And it's funny, I even saw on the freeway when I was driving the other day, and it said, if you like retail theft, or if you commit retail theft, handcuffs are in your future, something like that, where it's like, we're not playing that game. We're not going to let you out 12 times in the span of a week and, you know, let you out for a 13th time with no bail whatsoever. We will lock you up. So don't even try it here. Anyways.
To be present for a celebration of a conviction.
That's what it felt like, celebration?
A celebration, that's what it felt like. The reactions I get when I tell people my story is, they say it's the worst nightmare. You know, it's the closest thing to dying.
I was wrongfully convicted.
Jamal, I'm going to
by
read
the
you
office of
a quote real
Kamala
quick.
Harris. Now, this was from 5 years ago.
Hey, it's Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris hopes you'll forget her record as a drug warrior and draconian prosecutor. Progressive prosecutor, my ass. Now, if the Trump campaign and the Republicans were smart, they would go after her for this. Kamala Harris says that she's progressive, but in reality, she was, you know, actually, if you really think about it, one of the perfect picks for being Joe Biden's running mate, because he wrote the damn bill, wrote the crime bill, that, not inadvertently, I'm looking for the word, disproportionately affected people of color, when we're talking about throwing people in jail for nonviolent drug offenses. And who was there to exercise that policy? Kamala Harris, supposed progressive prosecutor.
She's a rising star in the Democratic Party. The most sort of Obama-like hype around her.
Possibly your next president of the United States.
Last
Oh my God, they're trying so hard to make this hollow shell of a human being seem human. They're making her go out there and do all of these, you know, hello, fellow kids appearances, but it doesn't work. She just comes off, rightfully so, because it's true. She comes off as just so fake and just so career climbing, and it's because she is.
Last week, Senator Kamala Harris finally made it official.
I am running for president of the United States.
Well,
And
The California Democrat is trying to position herself as a reformer who works tirelessly to correct the abuses of the criminal justice system. But the senator has one big problem: her long record as a law and order prosecutor. Harris's new memoir, The Truths We Hold, makes no mention of her past as an old school drug warrior, a defender of dirty prosecutors, and a political opportunist who has made life more dangerous for sex workers. Harris doesn't apologize for her previous stances, even those she now disavows. Instead, she's decided to try and convince voters that she has always been a progressive prosecutor.
This is what I'm saying. Instead of doing a mea culpa, which would be hard to turn from, but would be a lot more respectable, she's instead doing the the same thing that the Biden administration was doing for him and his obvious mental decline of don't believe your lying eyes, memory holing a lot of past events, and just trying to pretend that she has always been this, bastion of progressivism, when in reality, as she alludes to, she, and as Tulsi was saying, put over 1,000 people in jail over her, the course of her tenure. And it was for just simple marijuana possession, nonviolent offenses. I'll pass on Brown Hillary. See, that's what a lot of people feel. It's a very similar vibe to Hillary Clinton, but they're trying to use identity politics. So far from being the secret super left socialist communist that the Republicans are trying to paint her as, she actually was a draconian prosecutor. One of the massive reasons why you should not trust her. She's been trying to rewrite her image instead of accounting for it and saying, I've changed my mind, I deeply regret that. Just alluding to the fact that you can't trust her. This is a political windsock. She cannot tell the truth about her record. She doesn't actually believe anything. Here. Now, speaking of marijuana, Kamala Harris made headlines last week when she joked in a radio interview that of course she smoked marijuana in her younger years. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me? Her dad, Donald J. Harris, who is a professor at, I believe, Harvard, he wrote, "My dear departed grandmothers, whose extraordinary legacy I described in a recent essay on this website, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of a pot-smoking joy seeker in the pursuit of identity politics." Her own dad, which is funny because I'm not going to pretend to be her therapist, but it does seem very interesting how a lot of kind of subconscious psychological decisions could be potentially tied back to massive daddy issues. Doesn't seem like she has the best relationship with her dad, and I understand why from her dad's perspective, if he is a way more actual left-leaning progressive person who's proud of his Jamaican heritage, and he sees his daughter absorbed and completely become this swamp creature of the Democratic Party who leans all into fake identity politics and try to whitewash her very anti-progressive record as a prosecutor. And I believe he disavowed her entire... Yeah, here we go. "Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically dissociate ourselves from this travesty." Man, imagine having your own father say that about you. Harris's parents separated when she was young, divorced a few years later. Though Donald Harris remained a part of his children's lives, Kamala Harris and her sister were raised by their mother. Now we're delving deep. Now, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for internal family issues, normally. I'm just bringing it up because it's not a petty, non-political family dispute. It says something about her character and the person that she's trying to paint herself as versus the person she really is. About how her own dad, who really talks the talk and walks the walk in terms of being a lefty. Like, I think he even teaches Marxism. Here he is, Donald J. Harris. Wow, you can see the resemblance in them. Jamaican American economist and professor, never known how to pronounce this, emeritus at Stanford University, Stanford, known for applying post-Keynesian ideas to development economics. So, very smart guy, principled guy. He sees his daughter just absolutely fall hook, line, and sinker into this trap of becoming a complete identity politician, not actually standing for anything and holding up your supposed progressive ideas. And he is so deeply offended by it that he essentially disavows and disowns, in a way, his own daughter over it. So I think it's worthy of bringing it up, just for how much it says about her character. Speaking of, I meant to show this. Yes. So, progressive prosecutor, huh? Let me see if I can find the video.
You know what nobody talks about when it comes to building a content creator business? That if you're not using a tool like HoneyBook to...
Now, Senator Kamala Harris is to this clip
Standing here.
of 2009.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
Oh, real progressive.
Well, this was a little
fix the issue.
controversial in San Francisco.
Look at that laugh, man. I know it's mostly surface level, but there's something about the laugh itself, but it's mostly the timing of when she laughs. This is why, and they're going to try and, deflect and say that you're making fun of me for my laugh. It's not the laugh. It's what you decide to laugh at. It's the context surrounding your laugh. She's laughing about locking up parents for their truant children. Just watch this, given that.
This was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look.
Which means that her staff was obviously the rational ones in the room. I'm assuming hopefully they were against it for principled reasons, or I would fucking hope so. But they were the rational ones in the room going, this is insane. You are an insane person. Why would this even cross your mind as a good idea? And it's kind of a perfect character, perfect example of when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When you're a supposed progressive prosecutor, but in reality, you're just a run-of-the-mill draconian prosecutor, even something as mundane as truancy. And I'm not disagreeing with her first premise that truancy can lead and is shown to lead to a lot of problems, especially with crime, which is how she kind of tries to connect it. But that being said, the problem looks like a nail to her when basically all she can do is threaten people with jail.
Look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school.
So she plays it and characterizes it as this carrot and stick approach. And she even says, I have a huge stick as the prosecutor, the huge stick being, I'll throw your ass in jail. Now, do I think in most things a carrot and stick approach is probably a way to go? Yes, you have to have a positive reinforcement incentive and a negative reinforcement. The question is, what should each of those be? And should you prioritize one more than the other? In Kamala's mind, instead of, applying light pressure in the negative reinforcement area, she jumps straight to, and I don't know the details of, if you're truant 3 times within this span, it doesn't matter. She jumps straight to threatening parents with jail time.
So, to that end, on my letterhead, now let me tell you something about my letterhead. When you're the DA of a major city in this country, usually the job comes with a badge. And there is often an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's gonna put you and me in jail.
Look at how she laughs so gleefully about freaking out one of her supposed friends who's, do I believe it completely and that it wasn't just a parent using it as a tactic? Whatever, doesn't matter. Look at how she is so gleeful at the idea of people being freaked out that she was going to throw their asses in jail because their kid isn't going to school. Now, again, I think that's a massive problem. I think the kid needs to be in school, and there's different ways of incentivizing and other forms of negative reinforcement for missing school that don't involve costing the taxpayers massive amounts of money, giving someone a criminal record, just a whole litany of reasons why this is such a, talk about draconian. This is textbook draconian, for what is a serious issue, but in the grand scheme of things, jail should be reserved for people who commit crimes who are massively detrimental to society. Violent crime, theft, fraud, things of that nature. She is reserving that for not just the kids. I understand they're kids, and so by definition they probably don't understand the full gravity of their own actions, and the parents are responsible, but not even the kids themselves. She's going to throw the parents in jail as if somehow that is going to motivate a truant kid to get their ass in school and stay there. It's insane on every level, and the lack of humanity that she exhibits is what makes her perfect for politics. But it's scary to think that this person has a decent chance of becoming one of the most powerful people in the entire world. This is what they should be hitting Kamala Harris over the head with all the time politically, because it's terrible. Imagine this flashing on everyone's screen. Even a lot of the liberals who aren't just dyed-in-the-wool shit libs, K-Hive, I'm going to vote for literally doesn't matter who. You could put Mitt Romney in the Democratic Party and I'd vote for him because I'm a team player. I'm going to vote for whoever Team Blue tells me to vote for. Anyone who's kind of on the fence or, not necessarily going to go vote for the other side, but might stay home because, the Democrats have not been putting up people who represent actual principled lefties. You shoot this across the screen, you shoot some of the other stories I've covered across the screen, that's going to make people go, wow, yeah, I can't vote for her, even if she has a progressive, supposedly progressive VP. This is just insane. Can you imagine her being at the helm of the most powerful country in the world? That would be crazy.
Yes, we achieved intended effect.
So one of the issues that we'll, of course,
we achieved the intended effect. She's just so happy. She's just so happy about scaring the shit out of people that she was going to throw them in jail. It just says a lot about her character. Now, before we move on, this is said 2010 video. I didn't know this. I had seen that video because I've been, following politics for a while, and I kind of looked into her because she, before Tulsi absolutely nuked her campaign back in 2019, she was kind of the favorite. The Democrats really liked her because she, A, the identity politics, B, she kind of gave lip service to semi-progressive ideas, but if you just looked into her past, you could see there ain't nothing progressive about her. But they knew she was extremely malleable. She just really wanted it so much that whatever they told her to do, she was going to do. And so they really liked her. They thought she was the perfect candidate. And then Tulsi, if it wasn't for that meddling Tulsi, she just came out and absolutely body slammed her on that stage, and it became one of the biggest moments of the 2019 in the political sphere of the 2020 race. And she became VP anyways, and here we are. We can't get rid of her. But under this truancy prosecution plan that she had, she prosecuted a homeless mom who had 2 jobs, whose kids missed classes. Laughing, Harris said she wanted to scare parents by sending prosecutors who worked on gang and murder cases to meet with them about their children's truancy. She urged the prosecutors to really look mean. So her entire tactic, besides the fact that threatening them with jail in and of itself is scary and, threatening, she wanted the prosecutors to intentionally look extra mean. It really was this shock and awe campaign. She's got that draconian prosecutorial vibe to her of this scared straight. That's the word I'm looking for, or the term. This scared straight mentality of, if we just threaten them enough with that they're going to be thrown into a holding cell and not see the light of day for God knows how long, they'll act correctly. Then, to show how she had gotten a parent to shape up, she shared the story of a homeless single mother who held 2 jobs and had 3 children who were not going to all their classes. Harris, smiling, again, it's not about your laugh, it's about what you laugh and smile at. Harris, smiling, said that after the mother was charged and threatened with jail, the kids' attendance improved. Walker Bragman, I'm not the hugest fan of this dude, but I mean, this is some of his better work. Kamala Harris continued on to describe how she'd brought charges against a single homeless mother of 3 who was working 2 jobs because her children were truant. And this was a success story. Another person, Jermaine Lee Willis, posted, Kamala Harris loves to put desperate people in jail. Here she giddily recalls the time a father said his wife had to sit down the kids and tell them to obey the police and go to school or everyone's going to jail. Is this a healthy learning environment? Exactly. It's such a ass backwards for anyone who has any empathy and just a rational brain. But again, this is who we might have as president, a person who really thought that putting parents in jail would improve truancy rates, and that's totally the sign of a healthy society. This is what the Republicans should be hitting her with politically. Now, let's get on to how she is totally a darling of the ruling elite. Kamala Harris, and this is back in August 22nd of 2019, before her political campaign just absolutely got nuked by Tulsi-based Tulsi. Kamala Harris raises over $1 million at the Hamptons and Martha's Vineyard fundraisers. Senator Kamala Harris raised over $1 million through several campaign fundraisers in the wealthy enclaves of the Hamptons and Martha's Vineyard. Harris attended multiple events last weekend in the affluent vacation spots, including 5 in the Hamptons. The massive haul comes after she suffered a quick decline in national polls. They were trying to prop her up so much. She was the darling. You know, she is the perfect poster child for the people of Martha's Vineyard and the Hamptons. They can, you know, it's the people who are massively wealthy and love to cosplay as being this, you know, lefty progressive. These lefty progressives, but in reality, if you look at their policies, their reactions on, you know, what they actually think, the fact that they'd rather not get taxed a whole lot, but they love to virtue signal on, you know, social issues that don't really affect them. She's the perfect candidate. They can, you know, they can virtue signal on identity politics and, you know, certain cultural issues and social issues, while understanding that she's going to keep the neoliberal status quo completely intact. And so they don't have to worry in that regard whatsoever. Hence why she was received very well there before they realized, shit, we can't run her. You know, again, meddling Tulsi absolutely nuked her campaign. Maybe the Republicans should bring Tulsi out and just be like, hey, can you do a repeat of 2019 and just absolutely, you know, crater her chances? That's an idea. That would actually be a winning idea for them. Here we go. This is what I wanted to get to as well. Going back to her prosecutorial record. Basically, let me just read a part of this and then explain. San Francisco District Attorney Kamala Harris's office violated defendants' rights by hiding damaging information about a police drug lab technician and was indifferent to demands that it account for its failings, a judge declared Thursday. In a scathing ruling, the judge concluded that prosecutors had failed to fulfill their constitutional duty to tell defense attorneys about problems surrounding Deborah Madden, the now retired technician at the heart of the cocaine skimming scandal that led police to shut down the drug analysis section of their crime lab. Prosecutors, unable to vouch for the reliability of Madden's work, have dismissed more than 600 drug cases since the scandal became public. So, essentially what happened, I'll just cliff notes this. Under Kamala Harris's tenure, they had a drug lab at the police, I don't want to say police station, but the police had a drug lab where essentially what they would do is test drugs that they supposedly found and use that evidence to prosecute people for drug crimes. And there was that person, Deborah Madden, who was corrupt, I guess you could say. What she was doing is, in some cases, consuming some of the drugs, but let's just say you couldn't be sure that they were reliable results and that they weren't actually just false positives. And so, obviously, the defendants have a right to know if the biggest piece of evidence against them could potentially have been falsified and be a false positive, and yet Kamala Harris's office and her decided to cover up this massive scandal instead of calling for accountability and, you know, doing an about face and saying, wow, this is terrible, we're going to remedy this, don't worry, we want to uphold our responsibility as prosecutors. You know, even though our job is to throw people in jail, our job is to throw people in jail that deserve it, and we can't confidently say that these people deserve it. If it's a nonviolent drug crime in the first place, I don't exactly think, especially if it's a first offense, that we should be populating our prisons and jails with nonviolent drug offenders. I think there's much more productive ways to account for that. But regardless, we can't vouch for the fact that these people actually committed this crime, and therefore we're going to, you know, remedy this situation, whether it be releasing them, retrying, seeing if there's other evidence that could stick, but at least acknowledging the problem. Instead, she covered for them, tried to cover it up. The failure by Harris's office to produce information actually in its possession regarding Madden and the crime lab is a violation of the defendant's constitutional rights. She said Harris's office had the duty to implement some type of procedure to secure and produce information relevant to Madden's criminal history. Masulo said her repeated requests that prosecutors explain why they did not have such procedures were met with a level of indifference. It just furthers this notion that she wants to run, as Tulsi said, as a prosecutor president, and, you know, fake that she's been this progressive prosecutor, when in reality she has a terrible record. She threw tons of people in for nonviolent drug offenses. She threatened parents with jail time for their kids' truancy. And she sees everything through a lens of a prosecutor. And, you know, in some ways that's kind of understandable considering she is a prosecutor. But is that someone that you want running the most powerful country in the world? Now, this one is a doozy. Let's see, which one do we want to start with? New book whacks Kamala Harris's AG record during housing crisis. Kamala Harris catapulted to Democratic stardom once a narrative on a narrative based on her role as California's Attorney General during the housing crisis, when she was an unrelenting adversary of big banks and mortgage lenders and a champion of consumers. But a new book by Pulitzer Prize nominated reporter Aaron Glantz challenges that storyline, arguing that Harris not only allowed Steve Mnuchin's One West Bank to get away with foreclosing on tens of thousands of state homeowners, but then tried to bury the evidence. Let's just say it's continuing the theme of faking that you're some sort of champion of the people, progressive, populist, when your record stands in stark opposition to that notion. The book, titled Homewreckers: How a Gang of Wall Street Kingpins, Hedge Fund Magnates, Crooked Banks, and Vulture Capitalists Suckered Millions out of their homes and Demolished the American Dream, was published this week. It posits that a group of Wall Street moguls, including Trump cabinet appointees Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross, as well as White House insiders like Steve Schwarzman and Tom Barrack, took advantage of a rigged system to transfer billions of dollars from individual homeowners into their own pockets during the Great Recession. Says, in California, Mnuchin, now the Treasury Secretary, acquired regional banks like One West with the federal government's help. The banks got billions in subsidies as they foreclosed on 35,000 homeowners in the Golden State alone. Harris did little to stop that bleeding and later tried to suppress evidence of her inaction. Harris's deputies recommended that their boss sue the bank, Glantz said, citing the bank's loss share agreement with the FDIC, which stated that Mnuchin's bank could only receive payments from the government if it followed proper foreclosure procedures. If the state of California found One West violated those rules, the payments could stop, saving not only homeowners but government coffers as well. But despite a strong recommendation from her staff, Harris never legally pursued Mnuchin's One West Bank. As a result, no one at One West faced prosecution and no one got their homes back. I would, if I was the Republicans and in the Trump camp, hit her with this. She's one of the reasons, it would be hard because, Mnuchin was in his administration, so it would be really hard for them to go after her for this, but people don't look that far into it. People are dumb. You could just say Harris was partially responsible for helping these Wall Street cronies take your house. Center for Popular Democracy. Kamala Harris fails to explain why she didn't prosecute Steve Mnuchin's bank. I think there was they were talking about how they found tons of offenses, and if they kept looking, they probably could have found a lot more. And yet, why did we not prosecute? Oh my God, is this not just the most typical Kamala Harris answer ever? It's a decision my office made. So you're passing the buck to your office, and then also that's like the most generic statement I've ever heard. We went and we followed the facts and the evidence, and it's a decision my office made. We pursued it just like any other case. We go and we take a case wherever the facts lead us. But the investigation into what the memo called widespread misconduct was closed after Harris's office declined to file a civil enforcement action against the bank. Harris's statement on Tuesday does not explain how involved she was with the decision to not prosecute or why the decision was made. So this one is basically just inaction. It's not necessarily that she was in cahoots with Mnuchin and One West. It just more so speaks to the ineptitude and inaction when you're supposedly this progressive prosecutor. And if you had the ability to go after one of the clearly most corrupt entities, human beings, with Mnuchin and then the other swamp people around him, and help to save actual middle class from this crony Wall Street capitalist, from like hollowing out the American middle class, stealing homes essentially with this quote unquote rigged system, and you didn't, with no clear reason as to why. Just, we followed the evidence and the facts of the case. Well, from what I've seen, there was a lot of shady stuff happening that you could have at least mounted a fight against these people. But you didn't. And we have to just speculate on why, whether it was indifference, whether it was, you know, she knew that it would potentially wreck her career chances in politics. Whatever it may be, it does not contribute to a good record as some bastion of populist progressivism as a prosecutor. There's a ton more I could get into with Kamala. She's just a never-ending gift of flip-flops on her old policies. You know, if you follow her at all, it's clear that she doesn't actually believe anything principally. It's all just cynically, you know, being weaponized politically. Essentially just trying to say whatever in the moment she thinks will be the most beneficial to her. That's why I don't know if it was more beneficial back in the day to be draconian, but it seems to make sense that she was saying what she thought would be the most beneficial back then. Now, obviously, she's trying to completely rewrite history on her record because she understands that it looks absolutely atrocious. And it paints a picture of a political windsock who is just a complete puppet, for lack of a better term, blowing in the wind, going wherever the powers that be tell her to, doing whatever they tell her to, just in the pursuit of power. And in order to try and rewrite history and cover up some of this obvious failures in her past, she decides to tap Tim Walz, who gives a little bit more of this air of progressive populism. Will it work? Well, given how stupid the Republicans are being in trying to characterize her as this secret communist socialist, and then even bringing up political losers for them, like abortion, she might actually have a chance now. You know, when your enemy is that dumb, you count your blessings. But if they're smart, they'll change course and hit her on her real record. A lot of the things that I just went over, you know, hit her. She put innocent people in jail. Have Tulsi come out and do another like off the top rope elbow. Hit her on her record of not, you know, she's supposedly this progressive prosecutor, but she didn't try to save homes for 35,000 Californians. Hit her on her daddy issues, but do it in a substantive way. Don't do it in a hacky political way, because then that'll just come across as being, you know, low, and you guys don't need to be seen as low anymore. You already are. And just hit her on her real record all you're doing is energizing the lefties who are reluctant to go out and fight for her. And if they think, because you're characterizing her as this, but if they think all of a sudden that she is some progressive populist because you're making her out to be one, they might actually go out and vote more. Hit her where it actually counts. Demotivate her base. And that's the only way that you hurt her. The strategy currently is only going to help. So those are just a few of the big reasons why Kamala Harris would be a disaster president, and the Republicans are only doing her favors by running the attacks that they're running right now. They're one-trick ponies, and we live in just such a dumb time. Such a dumb time that these are our two choices. Just why? Just why? But thanks for tuning in to my rant. I can't stand this woman. She's just a complete political windsock, and so I might edit this up into a more concise video, but yeah, until we learn more, I'm sure there will be more coming out. That is one of the best reasons to avoid Kamala Harris like the plague.